I just played every Elder Scrolls game ever made, from the DOS nightmares that crash every 5 minutes to Skyrim, which I somehow only played for the first time last month. For most people, Skyrim was their childhood. For me, it was the one that got away. So I did the only logical thing. I went back and played every single one. Even the weird ones. Even the ones Bethesda pretends didn't happen. I first played Arena when I was too young to understand it. Daggerfall, where I died to rats. Morrowind, where I spent hours jumping across rooftops trying to level acrobatics. But Skyrim was the missing piece. And as I played through them all, I realized this series isn't just about dragons or destiny. It's about ambition, about a studio that refused to stop trying, even when their games were broken or too weird for their time. Bethesda went from a small studio that could have vanished overnight to one of the biggest names in gaming. This is the journey of the Elder Scrolls, through every rise, every failure, and every insane idea that somehow worked. Arena was where it all started. The first Elder Scrolls game, and the first time Bethesda said, yeah, let's make something way too big for our own good. Originally, it wasn't even supposed to be an RPG. The idea was a gladiator game. You'd travel from city to city, fighting in coliseums. But then they started adding side dungeons, then towns, then a world map, and suddenly, they'd accidentally built a continent. When you boot it up, the first thing you notice is the size. Arena doesn't just have one region, it has all of Tamriel. Skyrim, Morrowind, Hammerfell, all there. Procedurally generated, infinite feeling, and honestly kind of insane for 9. You can walk around, enter shops, talk to townsfolk, and explore dungeons. The problem is it's also borderline unplayable. You die to rats in the first 5 minutes, you swing your sword by dragging your mouse like you're swatting a fly, and there's no tutorial, no guidance, no mercy. It's a kind of game that hates you just for existing. But once you push through that opening dungeon, you start to see something special. Arena was ambitious in a way few games dared to be. It had a day-night cycle, weather, random encounters, things that would define open worlds for decades. And it did all of that on floppy disks. You can see the DNA of everything that would come later, the scale, the freedom, the go anywhere, do anything mindset that became the heart of the Elder Scrolls. And for all its chaos, it feels like the spark of something bigger. A game made by people who had no idea what they were doing but believed in it anyway. Arena wasn't perfect, but it was the kind of beautiful failure that gaming needs sometimes. Without it, there would be no Morrowind, no Oblivion, no Skyrim, and definitely no sleepless nights spent chasing Daedric quests that go on way too long. If Arena was Bethesda's "we have no idea what we're doing but let's ship it anyway" phase, then Daggerfall was them saying, okay, we know what we're doing now, we're just gonna break it on purpose. Released in 1996, Daggerfall took the word ambition and punched it straight through a CRT monitor. The map was so big, 15,000 cities and towns, that it felt like they just hit copy-paste on the entire continent. You can literally walk across it all, but I wouldn't recommend it unless you've got 3 days, a strong bladder, and a podcast queue longer than the main quest. And look, I tried to take it seriously. I rolled up my sleeves, made a character that looked like a tax accountant with a sword, and immediately got lost in the starting dungeon. Then the game crashed. Then it crashed again, and again. At one point, I wasn't sure if I was still playing Daggerfall or just staring at my desktop background. But once it actually worked, you could tell how ahead of its time it was. You could buy houses, join multiple guilds, summon Daedra, and commit tax fraud, sometimes all in the same afternoon. It was basically Skyrim, but on caffeine pills and zero quality control. And that's what made it legendary. Because for the first time, the modders showed up, fans who said,
okay, Bethesda,
we love you but we'll fix this ourselves. They started patching bugs, adding quests, and even rebuilding the game from scratch years later. Daggerfall wasn't just a game, it was a public beta that accidentally invented the modern Bethesda experience, broken, brilliant, and somehow impossible to stop playing. By the time Morrowind came around, Bethesda had finally realized something important. Maybe, just maybe, a map the size of Europe wasn't necessary. So instead of trying to build the entire planet, they decided to handcraft one island, Vardenfell, and somehow created one of the most atmospheric, alien-feeling worlds in gaming history. For me, Morrowind was that game I saw older cousins playing when I was too young to understand what was going on. You know, the one where they spent 3 hours talking to mushroom people while I sat there wondering why everything looked like it was filmed through a bowl of soup. When I finally played it myself, years later, I got it. There's something hypnotic about this game. There are no quest markers, no voice acting, no hand-holding, just you, a journal, and a map that looks like it was drawn by a drunk Jack Sparrow. And for all its craziness, it worked. You'd walk out of the first town, take a wrong turn, and end up fighting a crab the size of a car. The combat felt like trying to hit a fly with a broom, but the world, the music, the weird architecture, the sense of mystery, it just pulled you in. It's also the first time Bethesda really figured out what made the Elder Scrolls special. They stopped trying to outsize everyone else and started focusing on immersion. Every cave felt hand-placed. Every NPC had a story, even if most of them were written by the same 3 guys. And of course, this was the moment the modding scene truly exploded. The Morrowind construction set gave players the power to change everything. If you didn't like how something looked, you could fix it. If you wanted to turn all the guards into clowns, you could do that too. It was freedom in its purest form, inside and outside the game. Morrowind saved Bethesda. If it had flopped, we wouldn't have Oblivion, Skyrim, or Todd Howard memes. And what kind of bleak world would that even be? Oblivion was the first Elder Scrolls game that actually made me feel like I knew what I was doing, until I met my first rat and immediately died. This was the game that somehow made janky NPC faces, awkward sword swings, and over-the-top dialogue feel charming. Every conversation sounded like someone's first day in drama class, but you could tell they were really trying their best, which was charming in its own way. That's the thing about Oblivion. It's weird, it's broken, it's kind of dumb sometimes, and it's great. The moment you step out of the sewers and see Cyrodiil stretching out in front of you, that's when Bethesda perfected the "holy crap, I can go anywhere" moment. The map is opening up. It's freedom, chaos, and potential, all crammed into one bright, slightly cursed fantasy world. And that world, it's alive in the strangest way. Guards chase you halfway across the map for stealing an apple. Bandits demand 100 gold when they're wearing gold armor worth 10 times that. And somewhere, an NPC is delivering the same line for the 1000th time. "Stop right there, criminal scum." But behind all the memes and jank, Oblivion had heart. It was packed with creativity, secret Tedric quests, haunted paintings, murder mysteries, a literal quest about cheese for Sheogorath. Every corner felt like it had something ridiculous waiting for you. The actual Oblivion gates looked genuinely terrifying. They really nailed the design. On the outside, at least. The inside was pretty meh. This is where Bethesda leaned all the way into what makes them them. The chaos, the absurdity, the unintentional comedy. And weirdly enough, that's what gave the game its soul. Even now, years later, I think Oblivion might be the most Bethesda game ever made. That perfect mix of awe, laughter, and the occasional NPC staring straight into your soul. I've got a confession to make. I only played Skyrim for the first time a few weeks ago. Yeah, more than a decade late. Everyone else has spent a decade shouting Fuse Roda and modding Thomas the Tank Engine into dragons. And I just showed up like, "Hey guys, have you heard of this cool little game called Skyrim?" And honestly, I expected it to feel dated. You know, that kind of nostalgia is doing all the heavy lifting thing. But the moment that dragon came down before I got executed at Helgen, I realized why Skyrim became a cultural reset. The atmosphere just hits. That foggy mountain air, the chanting in the background, The sense that something massive is about to unfold. And then of course the dragon crashes your execution. Instantly iconic. When I finally stepped out of the cave and saw the open world for the first time, I remember I just stood there for a good minute. I lifted my left hand from my keyboard and just moved the camera with my right. The music swelled, the mountains stretched into the distance, and for a second I understood why people have been replaying this same game for over a decade. It's that feeling of endless possibility. I started doing what every new player does, walking in a random direction, ignoring the main quest completely, and accidentally getting arrested in 3 different cities before level 10. I joined the Thieves Guild, got bitten by a vampire, and at one point, tried to climb a mountain by jumping sideways like a deranged goat. It's the kind of chaos only Skyrim can get away with. The beauty of this game is how personal it feels. Everyone's Skyrim story is different. For some people it's dragon slaying and glory. For others it's stealing cabbages and launching bandits off cliffs with physics glitches. It's a game where you live in, you don't just play it. And yeah, it's janky. NPCs walk into walls, your horse defies gravity, and companions block every doorway like it's their divine calling. But am I crazy in thinking that that adds to the charm? The bugs are features at this point, not flaws. Playing it now, in 2025, made me realize something. Skyrim aged better than almost any other game from that era, and that's because it doesn't rely on graphics or trends. It's built on curiosity, exploration, and the freedom to make your own mess. And that's what I love about it. It doesn't tell you what kind of hero to be. It just drops you in the snow, hands you a sword and says, "Go, figure it out." And after finally playing it, I get why Bethesda keeps re-releasing it. Well, actually, I would also like Bethesda to give us a new Elder Scrolls, but that's beside the point. Skyrim hasn't been just a great game in a long time. It's a piece of gaming culture that refuses to die. And honestly, I hope it never does. After finishing Skyrim, I sat back and realized I've just played through 3 decades of gaming history. From Arena's dungeon crawl nightmares, to Morrowind's weird mushroom cities, to Skyrim's endless mountain ranges that people are still getting lost in 12 years later. The Elder Scrolls is a timeline of how far we've come, both as gamers and as dreamers. And here's the thing, I don't think any of these games are perfect, or even that good from a technical review standpoint. Arena was brutally unforgiving. Daggerfall was buggy enough to qualify as a psychological test. Morrowind was beautiful, but absolutely allergic to explaining anything. Oblivion had the best NPC faces this side of a melted wax museum. And Skyrim, well, Skyrim has been patched and repackaged so many times. It's basically the video game version of the Rolling Stones. It just won't retire. But somehow, that's what makes this series special. Every single entry, no matter how broken or dated, was ambitious, in a way that almost no one else dared to be at the time. Each game tried to make the world feel bigger, stranger, and more alive. And even when it failed spectacularly. If I had to rank them, Arena feels like a fever dream, ambitious, massive, and way ahead of its time, but also deeply allergic to fun. It's the kind of game that makes you appreciate modern autosave systems on a spiritual level. Daggerfall was Bethesda's mad scientist phase. The world was huge, like bigger than Great Britain, huge, and full of ideas that their computers could barely handle. It's broken, clunky, and absolutely fascinating. If Arena built the bones, Daggerfall gave it a heartbeat. Morrowind still feels like the purest Elder Scrolls experience, weird, bold, and unapologetically itself. It's the game that made the series mythic. Oblivion is probably the most fun in terms of actually playing the game. It's bright, chaotic, and full of those classic Bethesda moments where an NPC yells at you while ignoring gravity. And Skyrim, well, Skyrim is the one that feels like home. It lets you live in its world. Even after all these years, it's still one of the most immersive games ever made. Every Elder Scrolls game feels like a reflection of its time. Arena and Daggerfall were pure experimentation. Morrowind was world-building magic. Oblivion was discovery and comfort. And Skyrim is nostalgia that somehow never fades. What I've learned while writing this video is that Elder Scrolls isn't about graphics, or mechanics, or even lore. It's about that moment when you step out of the cave, see a world waiting for you, and realize you can go anywhere, and everywhere matters. It's about chasing that first sense of wonder, and realizing that no matter how many times you've played, there's always something new just over the next hill. So can I pick a single best Elder Scrolls game? Honestly, no. They're all flawed. They're all weird. They're all brilliant. And they all remind me why I love video games in the first place.